You think you miss them, but what you truly miss may be the version of them you created in your mind, the one who listened the way you needed, loved you the way you deserved, and always seemed one step away from finally changing. That version never fully existed, not consistently, not long enough to build a life around. You may be mourning someone who was partly your own imagination wearing their face, and that is why letting go feels impossible. You are not releasing only a person. You are releasing the future you designed around them, the apology they never gave, the love they never sustained, the moment they would finally recognize your worth, and the ending you believed you deserved. You keep waiting for the real person to become the imagined one, but people rarely become the potential we see in them. Sometimes they give us a few beautiful moments, and we spend months or even years waiting for those moments to become their permanent character. They never do. The person you are grieving may no longer exist anywhere except inside the memories you replay late at night, editing the past until it looks more beautiful or more painful than it truly was. This is the quiet trap nobody warns you about. You can remain loyal to a fantasy long after reality has asked you to leave. You defend it, you protect it. You keep waiting because releasing the fantasy feels like losing the person twice. In the chapters ahead, you will learn why the mind becomes attached to who someone could have been, why idealization can become a form of self-abandonment, and how to grieve the person who actually existed, not the potential you kept waiting for. You do not need them to become who you imagined. You do not need the apology, the explanation, or the ending you scripted in your mind. You only need the courage to see clearly and walk forward anyway. It is time to detach. It is time to return to yourself. It is time to take your life back. Chapter 1. You are attached to the person you imagined. Hard, it's potent, people pungent, firm. The first truth you must understand is uncomfortable but freeing. You may not be attached only to who they were. You may be attached to who you believed they could become. This is why the mind struggles to let go, even when the relationship repeatedly caused pain. Reality gave you inconsistency, confusion, distance, and disappointment. But imagination kept offering another possibility. Maybe they would change. Maybe they would finally understand. Maybe the next conversation would be different. Maybe one day they would become the person you had already met in your mind. That hope kept the attachment alive. You did not remain because every day was beautiful. You remained because certain moments were beautiful enough to make you believe the pain was temporary. A rare message felt like proof. A sincere apology felt like progress. One peaceful evening made you forget several painful weeks. You collected small moments and used them to build a future much larger than the evidence could support. This is how idealization works. The mind takes a few good qualities, a few promises, a few meaningful memories, and turns them into a complete person. Then, whenever reality contradicts that image, you explain the contradiction away. You say they are stressed, they are confused, they are afraid of love, they were hurt before, they do not know how to communicate. Perhaps some of these things are true, but an explanation does not remove the impact of repeated behavior. Someone can be wounded and still wound you. Someone can care about you and still be incapable of creating a healthy relationship. Someone can have good intentions and still leave you feeling unseen, unsafe, and emotionally exhausted. Understanding their pain does not require you to become a permanent home for it. This is where many people lose themselves. They confuse compassion with obligation. They believe that because they understand why someone acts a certain way, they must continue accepting it. But understanding is not agreement. Compassion is not permission. Love is not a contract requiring endless suffering. You are allowed to recognize their wounds while also recognizing what those wounds are doing to your life. You are allowed to say, I understand why you are this way, but I cannot keep becoming smaller because of it. The imagined version of someone is often built from their potential. You see their intelligence, softness, humor, ambition, or vulnerability. You notice what they could become if they healed, became consistent, faced their fears, or took responsibility. Then you begin loving the future version. You fall in love with who they might be after they change. But potential is not commitment. Potential is not character. Potential does not protect your peace. A person is not only what they are capable of becoming, they are also what they repeatedly choose. You cannot build a stable life with someone's possibility. You must build it with their patterns. Patterns tell the truth that promises often hide. If someone repeatedly disappears, that is a pattern. If they return only when they feel lonely, that is a pattern. If they become loving only when you begin to leave, that is a pattern. If every difficult conversation ends with avoidance, blame, or silence, that is a pattern. If their words promise safety, but their behavior creates anxiety, believe the behavior. This does not mean one mistake defines a person. Everyone fails. Everyone has difficult seasons. Everyone sometimes communicates poorly or responds from fear. But temporary mistakes and permanent patterns are not the same. A mistake is followed by responsibility. A pattern is followed by another excuse. A mistake creates learning. A pattern creates repetition. A mistake may hurt you once. A pattern teaches you to expect pain. You must become honest about which one you have been dealing with. Many people remain trapped because they are loyal to the beginning. They remember how the person behaved when the relationship was new. They remember the attention, warmth, effort, and promises. They keep comparing the present version to the early version, hoping the beginning will return. But sometimes the beginning was not the full truth. Sometimes it was the easiest part. There were fewer responsibilities, fewer conflicts, fewer expectations, and less emotional risk. Anyone can appear consistent when very little is required. Character becomes visible when communication becomes difficult, when accountability is needed, and when love requires more than attraction. Do not judge a relationship only by how beautifully it began. Look at what it became when reality entered. Did they become more honest or more distant? Did the connection become safer or more confusing? Did both people grow, or did one person keep carrying the entire relationship? Did the promises become actions, or did the promises simply become more elaborate? The past can become dangerous when you use it to excuse the present. You remember who they were during their best moments and ignore who you became during their worst. You remember their smile, but forget your anxiety. You remember the beautiful words, but forget how often their behavior made those words meaningless. You remember the connection, but forget how lonely you felt while trying to protect it. This is selective memory. The mind does this because it is trying to reduce pain. It chooses the parts that support attachment and hides the parts that support release. You must bring the entire story back into view, not to create anger, to create accuracy. Ask yourself, how did I feel most of the time? Not during the rare, beautiful moments. Most of the time. Did I feel calm? Did I feel respected? Did I feel free to speak honestly? Did I know where I stood? Or was I constantly analyzing, waiting, explaining, and trying to earn a sense of security? Healthy love does not require you to become a detective. You should not need to study every pause, message, expression, and change in tone just to understand whether you still matter. When love becomes a puzzle, anxiety often begins replacing connection. You stop experiencing the relationship and start managing it. You think carefully about what to say. You avoid certain subjects. You reduce your needs. You become grateful for the bare minimum because asking for more may create distance. Slowly, you train yourself to accept emotional crumbs. Then, when they give you one full moment of attention, it feels enormous. This is one reason inconsistent people can become so difficult to release. Consistency creates calm. Inconsistency creates obsession. When attention is unpredictable, the mind becomes more focused on receiving it. You begin waiting for the next message, the next return, or the next moment of affection. The relief feels intense because the absence was painful. You may call this intensity love, but sometimes it is simply the nervous system responding to uncertainty. You are not always attached because the connection is healthy. Sometimes you are attached because it never became complete. Incomplete stories remain active in the mind. They create questions. What if I had said something different? What if I had stayed longer? What if they were almost ready? What if they return after I finally move on? These questions keep the door open. The mind prefers a painful possibility to a clear ending because possibility allows hope to survive. But hope is not always healing. Sometimes hope becomes the place where your life remains paused. You must ask whether your hope is based on evidence or fear. Are you hoping because their actions consistently show change, or because accepting the ending feels unbearable? There is a difference between hope and denial. Hope looks at reality and still sees a path. Denial refuses to look because reality may close the path completely. You cannot detach while protecting every possibility. At some point, you must stop asking what could happen and begin accepting what has happened repeatedly. Acceptance is not weakness. It is not giving up on love. It is giving up on the belief that pain will eventually transform itself without responsibility. People change when they choose to change. They change when they face themselves, accept consequences, and practice new behavior long enough for it to become real. They do not change because you suffer more patiently. They do not change because you explain your pain more beautifully. They do not change because you love them beyond your limits. Your love may support change. It cannot create change for someone who keeps refusing it. This is one of the hardest lessons in detachment. You cannot love someone into emotional maturity. You cannot sacrifice enough to make them responsible. You cannot become so understanding that they finally stop taking your understanding for granted. At some point, continued patience becomes permission, not because you intended to allow the behavior, but because repeated access without consequences teaches the other person that nothing truly has to change. They apologize. You return. They repeat the pattern. You explain again. They promise again. You wait again. The cycle continues because hope keeps resetting the consequence. You begin measuring progress through words instead of behavior. But an apology without change is not repair. It is relief. It reduces tension for a moment. It makes both people feel as though something meaningful happened. Then the old behavior returns because the root was never addressed. You do not need another apology that sounds different. You need a pattern that becomes different. This is why detachment requires evidence-based thinking. You must stop asking, "What did they say?" Ask, "What did they repeatedly do?" Stop asking, "What did they promise?" Ask, "What changed after the promise?" Stop asking, "Do they care?" Ask, "Does their way of caring create safety, trust, and respect?" Someone may care for you and still be unable to participate in the kind of relationship you need. Care alone is not enough. Love alone is not enough. A healthy connection also requires consistency, honesty, effort, responsibility, and emotional availability. Without these things, love becomes something you feel but cannot safely live inside. The imagined person often possesses everything the real person lacks. In your mind, they communicate clearly, they take responsibility, they return differently, they finally see your worth, they become ready. You have conversations with this version late at night. You imagine what they might say. You create the apology, the reunion, and the future. These mental scenes feel comforting because they temporarily give you what reality withheld. But every imaginary conversation strengthens the attachment to someone who does not exist in that form. You leave the present and enter a private world where the relationship finally works. Then you return to reality feeling more empty than before. You must stop rehearsing a future with someone who is not building it with you. The future is not created by your imagination alone. It is created by mutual action. If you are the only person designing, waiting, sacrificing, and hoping, you are not building a shared future. You are carrying a private dream. That dream may be beautiful. It may also be keeping you from seeing that you are alone in the construction. You deserve more than a relationship that survives mainly inside your mind. You deserve reality, real effort, real communication, real consistency, real presence. This does not mean demanding perfection. It means requiring participation. A relationship should not depend on one person constantly repairing what two people keep breaking. You must also examine why the imagined version became so important. Sometimes we idealize others because we are trying to meet a need we have ignored within ourselves. Perhaps you wanted them to make you feel chosen because you had not chosen yourself. Perhaps you wanted them to make you feel valuable because your own value felt uncertain. Perhaps you wanted them to create safety because you had not yet built emotional safety inside your own life. This does not mean the need was wrong. It means you gave one person too much responsibility for meeting it. No person should become the only source of your worth, peace, identity, or hope. That is too much power to place in human hands. People are imperfect. They may change, they may leave, they may fail. When your entire emotional life is built around one person, their uncertainty becomes your instability. Detachment begins by bringing your power home. You stop asking them to decide whether you are worthy. You stop waiting for their attention to create a good day. You stop allowing their silence to become a statement about your value. You begin meeting yourself where you kept waiting for them to meet you. You listen to your needs. You protect your limits. You create routines that support you. You rebuild friendships. You return to work, health, purpose, and quiet. You become present in your own life again. This may feel unfamiliar because attachment made their world more important than yours. You knew their moods, schedules, fears, and needs. But did you know your own? Did you know what made you feel alive? Did you know what you were becoming? Did you know what your future required? Or did your life become an endless response to them? When someone becomes the center, everything else slowly moves to the edges. Your goals receive less attention. Your peace becomes negotiable. Your boundaries weaken. Your mind becomes crowded. You stop growing because so much energy is spent preserving the connection. Now that energy must return, not all at once, but intentionally. Each time you stop checking, energy returns. Each time you refuse to replay the conversation, attention returns. Each time you choose your routine instead of waiting for their message, identity returns. Each time you accept reality instead of entering fantasy, your life returns. This is how detachment begins. Not through one dramatic goodbye, through repeated acts of returning to yourself. There will be moments when reality feels too painful, and imagination will try to rescue you again. You will remember the best version. You will wonder whether you gave up too soon. You will imagine that they may finally be ready. When this happens, do not argue with yourself emotionally. Return to the full pattern. Write it down if necessary. Not only what you miss, also what it cost. Write down the confusion, the waiting, the anxiety, the broken promises, the moments when you felt alone beside someone you loved. Memory becomes more accurate when it is not controlled by longing. You do not need to make them terrible to leave. You only need to stop making them better than they repeatedly chose to be. This is an important distinction. Anger can help create temporary distance, but hatred is not freedom. If your healing depends on believing they were completely evil, one kind moment may pull you back. Clarity is stronger. Clarity says, they had good qualities, and the relationship still harmed me. They may have loved me in their own way, and their way was still not enough for a healthy life. They may have had reasons for their behavior, and I still deserve protection from its impact. I can appreciate what was real without returning to what was painful. This balanced truth is difficult, but powerful. It prevents idealization without requiring bitterness. You can honor the good memories and still accept that the full connection was not sustainable. You can be grateful for what you learned and still close the door. You can care and still leave. The mind often believes that releasing someone means invalidating everything that happened. It does not. Something can have been meaningful and still need to end. A person can have shaped your life without belonging in its next chapter. A relationship can teach you something without becoming your permanent home. Letting go does not erase the past. It changes the past's authority over your future. You are no longer asking the memory to become a destination. You allow it to remain a memory. This is where grieving becomes honest. You stop grieving the person you hoped they would become. You grieve the real relationship. You grieve what was present. You grieve what was missing. You grieve the effort you gave. You grieve the future that will not happen. This grief may feel heavier at first because fantasy no longer protects you, but it is cleaner. It leads somewhere. You cannot heal from an imaginary future because it has no ending. You can heal from reality because reality gives you something solid to accept. Let the truth be painful once, instead of allowing false hope to wound you every day. You do not need to keep waiting for the imagined person. You do not need to keep rewriting their behavior. You do not need to keep confusing rare moments with permanent character. Look at what was. Look at what repeatedly happened. Look at who you became while trying to hold it together. Then make a decision based on truth. The person you imagined may have been beautiful, but your life cannot be built with a person who exists only in possibility. You need presence. You need consistency. You need someone who participates in reality, not someone you must keep completing in your mind. And until that kind of connection exists, choose the peace of being alone over the pain of being emotionally abandoned beside someone. This is the first real act of detachment. Stop waiting for the real person to become the imagined one. See them clearly. See yourself clearly. See the cost clearly. Then, even if your heart is still catching up, begin walking forward with the truth. Chapter 2. Stop chasing the feeling of being chosen. The need to be chosen can become more powerful than love itself. At first, you may simply want someone to recognize your value, return your effort, and make you feel secure. But when they become distant, inconsistent, or uncertain, something changes inside you. Their hesitation becomes a challenge. You begin trying harder. You explain more. You forgive faster. You become more available, more patient, and more willing to accept what once would have hurt your dignity. You start believing that if you love them well enough, wait long enough, or prove your loyalty clearly enough, they will finally choose you completely. But love should not feel like an audition. You should not have to perform for basic affection. You should not have to compete with silence, mixed signals, emotional distance, or repeated disappointment. You should not have to become smaller just to remain important in someone else's life. The more you chase their approval, the more authority you give them over the way you feel about yourself. Their attention makes you feel valuable. Their silence makes you feel invisible. Their message brings relief. Their distance creates anxiety. Soon, your emotional state no longer belongs to you. It rises and falls according to someone else's behavior. This is where attachment becomes self-abandonment. You stop asking whether the relationship is healthy. You become focused only on whether it will continue. You stop evaluating how they treat you. You become consumed with convincing them not to leave. You stop choosing. You only wait to be chosen. But you are not powerless. You are not standing before someone hoping they will decide whether you deserve love. You also have a decision to make. You can ask whether this person brings consistency, honesty, safety, and respect into your life. You can ask whether their actions support the future they speak about. You can ask whether you feel loved or merely relieved whenever they stop withdrawing. This distinction matters. Sometimes you are not addicted to the person. You are addicted to the relief you feel when they return. Their distance creates pain. Their attention temporarily removes it. Because the relief is intense, you mistake it for deep love. Then they withdraw again, and the cycle begins. You wait, you worry, you try harder. They return, you feel alive again. This pattern can feel powerful, but intensity is not always intimacy. Sometimes intensity is created by instability. Healthy love does not require constant fear. It does not keep you guessing whether you matter. It does not make basic communication feel like a reward. It creates enough safety for you to remain yourself. You are allowed to need reassurance, effort, communication, and consistency. These needs do not make you difficult, but when someone repeatedly refuses to meet them, you must stop turning their limitations into a judgment of your worth. Their inability to choose you clearly does not mean you are unworthy of being chosen. It means they may not have the willingness, maturity, or capacity required to build what you need. That truth can hurt, but it is cleaner than spending years asking what is wrong with you. Stop asking, how can I make them choose me? Ask, why am I choosing someone who keeps making me beg for certainty? That question changes your position. You are no longer waiting beneath their decision. You are standing inside your own. Choosing yourself does not mean you stop caring. It means you stop sacrificing your dignity for attention. It means you no longer accept confusion as proof of passion. It means you stop treating occasional affection as enough to justify repeated pain. It means you understand that being wanted for a moment is not the same as being valued consistently. When you stop chasing, the silence may feel uncomfortable. You may feel empty because so much of your energy was organized around waiting, checking, hoping, and reacting. Do not mistake that emptiness for proof that you need to return. The emptiness is space. At first, it may feel unfamiliar. Eventually, it can become peace. Do not run back to chaos simply because chaos feels familiar. Let your mind adjust to not being controlled by another person's attention. Choose yourself when you want to send one more message. Choose yourself when you feel the urge to explain your value again. Choose yourself when they return with words, but no real change. Choose yourself when loneliness tries to convince you that half love is better than no love. Being chosen by the wrong person will never heal the pain of abandoning yourself. The real turning point comes when you understand that your value was never waiting inside their decision. You were worthy before they noticed you. You remained worthy when they became uncertain, and you will still be worthy when you finally walk away. Stop waiting to be selected by someone who repeatedly fails to see what they are holding. Choose your peace. Choose your dignity. Choose the life that begins when you no longer need their approval to believe you matter. Chapter 3. Stop waiting for the closure they may never give you. One of the hardest forms of attachment is waiting for an answer from someone who has already answered through their behavior. You keep hoping for one final conversation that will make everything clear. You want them to explain why they changed, why they became distant, why they made promises they could not keep, and why they allowed you to continue believing in a future they were no longer building. You think that if they finally tell the truth, the pain will settle. You think the right apology will make the ending easier to accept. You think closure is something they still possess and must eventually hand back to you. But sometimes the person who created the confusion is not capable of giving you clarity. They may not understand themselves well enough to explain what happened. They may know the truth, but avoid saying it because honesty would force them to face the harm they caused. They may offer an explanation that protects their image rather than respects your experience, or they may remain silent because silence allows them to escape responsibility. If your healing depends on their honesty, you may remain emotionally tied to them for years. You will continue waiting for a conversation they may never be mature enough to have. You will continue imagining the apology, the confession, and the moment when they finally understand your worth. Meanwhile, your life will remain paused around an answer that may never arrive. You must understand that closure is not always a gift given by another person. Sometimes closure is a decision you make after you have seen enough. It is the moment you stop asking the same question because the pattern has already answered it. Perhaps they said they cared, but their actions repeatedly made you feel alone. Perhaps they promised to change, but every promise led back to the same behavior. Perhaps they asked you to be patient while giving you no real evidence that anything was improving. Perhaps they returned whenever they felt lonely, but disappeared whenever responsibility was required. These patterns are answers. They may not be the answers you wanted, but they are still information. You do not always need to know why someone failed to love you well. Sometimes it is enough to accept that they did. This can feel unfair. You may have given them honesty, patience, explanations, and opportunities. It is natural to want the same honesty in return, but life does not always create balanced endings. Sometimes one person leaves with explanations, while the other leaves with questions. Sometimes the person who caused the wound moves forward before the person who carried it. Sometimes there is no final conversation that feels complete. You must not confuse an incomplete ending with an incomplete life. The story may have ended badly, but your future does not have to remain trapped inside that ending. You can walk forward without understanding every detail. You can heal without receiving every answer. You can close a chapter even when some sentences remain unfinished. The need for closure often hides a deeper hope. Part of you may not only want an explanation, you may want the explanation to reopen the door. You imagine them saying, "I was afraid. I did not know how to love you. I finally understand what I lost." You believe that if they say the right words, the pain will become meaningful and the relationship might still be saved. This is why you must become honest about what you are truly waiting for. Are you waiting for closure, or are you waiting for permission to keep hoping? Sometimes asking for another conversation is not about ending the attachment. It is about keeping contact alive. You tell yourself you need one final answer, but one answer creates another question. One message creates another exchange. One meeting creates another emotional opening. Soon, the final conversation becomes the beginning of the same cycle. True closure does not always feel satisfying. Sometimes it feels like silence you did not choose. Sometimes it feels like accepting that the person will never explain themselves in a way that heals you. Sometimes it means leaving without hearing the words you deserved. That can be painful, but it can also become powerful, because the moment you stop requiring their participation in your healing, you recover your authority. You no longer need them to admit what happened before trusting your own experience. You know what the connection did to you. You know how often you felt uncertain. You know how much of yourself you gave away. You know how many times you ignored your own pain because their promises kept renewing your hope. Your experience is valid even if they describe it differently. Two people can live through the same relationship and tell completely different stories. They may remember the good moments and forget the confusion they created. They may focus on your reaction and ignore the behavior that produced it. They may call you demanding because you eventually asked for consistency. They may call you difficult because you stopped accepting what once kept you silent. Their version of the story does not have to become yours. You do not need to win the argument about what happened. You need to stop living inside it. There is freedom in no longer trying to prove your pain to the person who benefited from misunderstanding it. Explain yourself once if necessary. Speak honestly. Ask the questions you need to ask, but pay attention to what follows. If the conversation brings more blame, confusion, defensiveness, or empty promises, stop expecting clarity from a place that repeatedly produces chaos. Some people do not give closure because keeping you uncertain gives them power. As long as you are questioning, you remain emotionally available. As long as you are waiting, they know the door is not fully closed. As long as they can return with a few words and restart your hope, they never have to offer real commitment. This is why uncertainty can become a form of control. They do not choose you completely. They also do not release you clearly. They give enough attention to keep you attached, but not enough consistency to make you secure. You live in the space between almost and never. Almost chosen, almost understood, almost loved correctly, almost given the future you were promised, but almost can consume years. At some point, you must stop treating possibility as commitment. You must stop building your life around what someone might do. You must begin responding to what they have repeatedly done. Closure begins when you choose facts over fantasies. The fact is that you had to keep asking for clarity. The fact is that promises became patterns of disappointment. The fact is that your peace kept disappearing inside the connection. The fact is that you were spending more time interpreting the relationship than enjoying it. The fact is that love should not require this much confusion to survive. When you face these facts, the need for another explanation begins to weaken. You realize that perhaps the explanation is less important than the impact. Maybe they were afraid. Maybe they were confused. Maybe they were wounded. Maybe they cared, but were not ready. All of these things may be true, but the result remains the same. You were hurt. You were left uncertain. You were asked to carry more than your share. Their reasons may explain the behavior. They do not erase its effect on your life. This is an important lesson because compassionate people often become trapped in analysis. They study someone's childhood, fears, wounds, and emotional patterns until every harmful action has an explanation. Understanding feels like progress, but sometimes it becomes another way of avoiding the final truth. You understand them so deeply that you stop protecting yourself. You keep saying, "They act this way because they were hurt." But the more important question is, how much longer will their pain be allowed to become mine? You are not required to hate someone in order to stop waiting for them. You are not required to prove they are a terrible person. They may be struggling. They may be confused. They may have loved you in the only way they knew how, and their way may still have been too painful, unstable, or incomplete for you to remain. You can accept their humanity without sacrificing your own. You can forgive their limitations without continuing to live inside them. You can say, "I understand why you are this way, but I can no longer allow it to shape my life." This is mature closure. It does not depend on blame. It depends on truth. You must also release the expectation that they will regret losing you. This expectation can keep attachment alive in a more hidden form. You begin improving yourself, but part of you is still imagining their reaction. You want them to see your strength. You want them to notice your absence. You want them to realize that nobody else will love them the way you did. You tell yourself you are moving on, but your growth is still secretly facing backward. As long as your transformation is designed to produce their regret, they remain at the center. You are still waiting to be validated. Only now, instead of waiting for love, you are waiting for remorse. That is not freedom. Freedom is improving even if they never see it. Freedom is healing even if they never apologize. Freedom is becoming stronger without needing them to feel weaker. Freedom is reaching a point where their regret, or lack of regret, no longer determines the meaning of your growth. Your life should not become a message to someone who failed to value it. It should become a home for you. You must also stop expecting closure to arrive as one dramatic moment. Healing often happens quietly. It happens when you stop checking their profile, when you stop rereading the conversation, when you notice that the memory appears but no longer controls the entire day, when you go somewhere beautiful and do not imagine telling them about it, when you begin making plans without wondering whether they will return. Closure is often not a door slamming shut. It is a door you slowly stop walking toward. One day, you realize you have not checked it for a long time. That is healing. You may still remember, you may still care, you may even still love part of who they were, but the need for an answer begins to disappear because you no longer need the past to change before you can live. You begin understanding that some questions are not meant to be solved. They are meant to be released. Why did they choose someone else? Why were you not enough for them to stay? Why did they make promises they did not keep? Why did they return only when you were beginning to heal? You can spend years searching for answers that keep changing according to the person, the moment, and the story. Or you can ask a more useful question: what has this experience taught me about what I must never abandon in myself again? Perhaps it taught you to trust patterns instead of promises. Perhaps it taught you not to make someone the center of your emotional world. Perhaps it taught you that love without consistency creates suffering. Perhaps it taught you that your boundaries must appear before resentment. Perhaps it taught you that being chosen means nothing if you must betray yourself to remain chosen. These lessons are more valuable than many explanations. An explanation may satisfy curiosity for one evening. A lesson can protect the rest of your life. Take the lesson. Stop begging the past to explain itself. You already know what the experience cost you. Now decide what it will give you. Let it give you clarity. Let it give you standards. Let it give you the courage to leave sooner next time. Let it teach you that confusion is not a foundation. Let it teach you that peace is not too much to ask for. You do not need one more conversation if every previous conversation ended in the same place. You do not need another apology if apologies have become part of the pattern. You do not need another promise if the behavior never changes after it. Sometimes the final answer is not spoken, it is repeated. And once something has been repeated enough, Believing it is no longer pessimism, it is wisdom. Closure can begin with one sentence. I wanted a different ending, but I accept the one their actions created. This sentence does not remove the grief. It removes the argument. You stop fighting what has already happened. You stop trying to force a cleaner ending out of someone who keeps creating confusion. You stop asking them to become the person who heals the wound they repeatedly reopened. You take that responsibility back. You begin healing through distance, through truth, through boundaries, through returning your attention to the life in front of you. You may never hear the words you deserved, but you can still give yourself what those words were supposed to provide. You can give yourself permission to stop waiting, permission to trust what you experienced, permission to move forward without their agreement, permission to close the chapter even if they still know how to knock on the door. Closure is not when they finally understand. Closure is when you no longer need them to. Closure is not when they regret losing you. Closure is when you stop measuring your worth through what they lost. Closure is not when the memory disappears. Closure is when the memory no longer decides your direction. You have waited long enough for someone else to complete the ending. Complete it yourself, not with hatred, not with revenge, with acceptance. Say, I may never know every reason. I may never receive the apology I imagined. I may never hear them admit what they did, but I know enough to choose peace. That is not weakness. That is the moment you stop handing the past authority over your future. And that is where real detachment begins. Chapter 4. Create distance before emotion makes the decision. Detachment becomes possible when you create enough distance to see clearly. When you are emotionally attached, every message feels important, every silence feels personal, and every small sign can restart hope. You may know the relationship is hurting you, yet one kind word can make you forget weeks of disappointment. This is why distance is necessary. Distance is not punishment, it is protection. You are not creating space to make them miss you. You are creating space so you can hear your own thoughts again. For too long, their presence may have shaped your mood. When they were warm, you felt safe. When they became distant, you felt rejected. Your emotions began moving according to their behavior. That is not freedom. Your peace should not depend on whether someone replies, returns, apologizes, or remembers you. To reclaim your emotional balance, you must stop feeding the connection every day. Stop checking their profile. Stop rereading old messages. Stop asking mutual friends for updates. Stop creating imaginary conversations where they finally say everything you wanted to hear. Each of these actions may feel harmless, but they keep the attachment alive. Every time you check, you reopen the emotional door. Every time you replay the memory, you teach your mind that this person still deserves your attention. Every time you search for a sign, you place your healing back in their hands. You do not need more information. You need less access. At first, this may feel uncomfortable. You may reach for your phone without thinking. You may feel anxious because you no longer know what they are doing. You may confuse the absence of contact with the loss of control, but you are never in control of them. You are learning to regain control of yourself. Do not expect your mind to let go immediately. Attachment was built through repetition, and it often weakens through repetition too. Every day you do not check, you create distance. Every time you feel the urge to contact them and choose not to, you strengthen self-control. Every time a memory appears and you redirect your attention, you teach your mind that the past no longer deserves the center of your life. This is quiet work. Nobody may see it, but it is how emotional freedom is built. You must also learn the difference between a feeling and an instruction. You may feel lonely. That does not mean you should return. You may miss them. That does not mean the relationship was healthy. You may want to send a message. That does not mean sending it will bring peace. Feelings are real, but they are not always wise. They often reflect habit, fear, chemistry, and memory. Let the feeling exist without turning it into action. Say to yourself, I miss them, but I do not need to contact them. I feel lonely, but I do not need to reopen the wound. I want an answer, but I already know the pattern. This is emotional maturity. It is the ability to feel something deeply without letting it make every decision. If they contact you, pause. Do not allow one message to erase everything you learned. Ask yourself what has truly changed. Are they taking responsibility? Are they offering consistent action? Are they respecting your boundaries? Or are they simply lonely, curious, or checking whether they still have access? A return is not always a transformation. Missing you does not mean they have learned how to love you well. An apology does not mean the pattern is over. You do not owe immediate access to someone simply because they appeared again. Take time, observe, respond from clarity, not relief. The old cycle often restarts because the moment they return, the pain temporarily disappears. You feel wanted again, and that relief feels so powerful that you forget why you created distance. Remember this: relief is not the same as repair. Repair requires changed behavior. Distance helps you see that difference. It gives you enough space to notice whether they are truly different or whether the same pattern is wearing new words. You may need practical boundaries. Mute or block them if seeing their activity keeps pulling you backward. Remove old messages if rereading them keeps you trapped. Change routines that are connected to the relationship. Stop visiting places online or in real life that repeatedly reopen the memory. These actions may feel harsh, but healing sometimes requires making access difficult. You are not weak because you need distance. You are wise enough to recognize what keeps hurting you. Do not use distance as a strategy to manipulate them. Do not disappear only to see whether they will chase you. That is still attachment. Real distance is not designed to create a reaction. It is designed to create recovery. Your goal is not to make them feel your absence. Your goal is to feel your own presence again. Return your attention to the areas of life that attachment neglected. Your sleep, your health, your work, your friendships, your goals, your home, your peace. You may be surprised by how much of your mental energy was being spent on one person, thinking about what they meant, what they felt, why they changed, whether they would return. That energy belongs to you now. Use it carefully. At first, the space may feel empty. Do not rush to fill it with another person. Let the emptiness teach you what was missing from your own life. Perhaps you need stronger routines. Perhaps you need deeper friendships. Perhaps you need purpose beyond relationships. Perhaps you need to learn how to sit with yourself without immediately searching for distraction. The emptiness is not always a sign that something is wrong. Sometimes it is the first room in your life that is finally available for something healthier. Create new experiences. Walk somewhere different. Return to an old interest. Begin a goal that requires your full attention. Call someone who makes you feel grounded. Build days that do not revolve around waiting. Detachment grows when your life becomes larger than the connection you lost. You do not need to erase the memory. You need to stop organizing your entire life around it. There will be moments when you feel strong, and others when the attachment returns. Do not judge yourself. Healing is rarely a straight line. One difficult evening does not erase your progress. One memory does not mean you are back at the beginning. Return to the boundary. Return to the truth. Return to yourself. The purpose of distance is not to become cold. It is to become clear. Clear enough to remember what happened. Clear enough to recognize what you deserve. Clear enough to stop confusing access with love. And clear enough to choose peace, even when part of you still wants to look back. Create the distance. Protect it. Let silence do what another conversation could not. Let it show you how much of your pain was being kept alive by constant access. And slowly, the person who once occupied your entire mind will begin becoming what they should have been all along, a part of your past, not the center of your life. Chapter 5. Rebuild the identity you lost while trying to keep them. Emotional attachment does not only occupy your thoughts. Over time, it can quietly reshape your entire identity until you no longer recognize how much of yourself you have given away. At first, the changes may seem small. You adjust your schedule to match theirs, change your plans because they might call, silence your needs to avoid conflict, and stop doing certain things because they do not understand or support them. You tell yourself these compromises are part of love, but slowly, your life begins revolving around one person's presence, moods, choices, and availability. You become more familiar with their emotions than your own. You know when they are distant, when they are upset, when they need space, and when they want attention. But you may no longer know what you need, what makes you feel alive, or what direction your own life was meant to take. This is one of the deepest costs of unhealthy attachment. You do not only risk losing the person, you risk losing yourself while trying to keep them. You may stop seeing friends because you are always waiting for them. You may delay important goals because the relationship consumes your energy. You may lose interest in hobbies that once brought you joy. You may become less confident because your value now feels connected to how they treat you. You may even begin changing your personality, becoming quieter, less expressive, less demanding, and less honest because the full version of you feels too difficult for them to handle. This is how self-abandonment often happens, not through one enormous sacrifice, but through 1,000 small decisions in which you choose the relationship over your own truth. You may have done this because you loved them. You may have believed that patience would save the connection, that understanding would create closeness, or that reducing your needs would make the relationship easier to maintain. But love that requires you to disappear is not sustainable. No healthy connection should demand that you become less alive in order to remain accepted. When the relationship changes or ends, you may experience more than heartbreak. You may experience confusion about who you are without them. You wake up and no longer know how to spend your time. You reach for your phone because waiting for their attention became part of your routine. You begin making a plan and immediately wonder what they would think. You visit a place, hear a song, or experience something meaningful, and your first impulse is still to share it with them. This can make detachment feel like emptiness, but the emptiness is not proof that you are incomplete without them. It may simply be the space where your own identity used to live. That space can be rebuilt. The first step is to stop asking only, "How do I stop missing them?" Ask instead, "Who did I stop being while trying to keep them?" This question turns your attention away from the person and back toward the life that was neglected. Think about who you were before the relationship became the center of your emotional world. What did you enjoy before every experience became connected to them? What goals did you once have? What parts of your personality felt stronger, freer, or more hopeful? What did you stop doing because the relationship demanded too much energy? What did you postpone because you kept waiting for the connection to become stable? Do not ask these questions to punish yourself. Ask them to find the road back. Perhaps you used to read, create, exercise, travel, study, write, spend time with friends, or sit peacefully without constantly checking your phone. Perhaps you had ambitions that seemed important before the relationship consumed your attention. Perhaps you were more confident before you started interpreting someone's inconsistency as evidence that something was wrong with you. These parts of you have not disappeared. They may have become quiet, neglected, or buried beneath grief, but they are still available. Return to them slowly. You do not need to rebuild your entire identity in one day. Begin with simple acts that remind you that your life belongs to you. Choose how you spend one evening without considering what they might be doing. Wear something because you like it. Visit a place that belongs only to your own memory. Restart an interest you abandoned. Call someone whose presence makes you feel grounded rather than anxious. Make one decision without imagining their reaction. These choices may look ordinary, but each one is an act of recovery. Every time you choose for yourself, you strengthen the part of you that attachment weakened. You may feel uncertain at first because you have become used to organizing your life around someone else. Choice may feel uncomfortable when you have spent too long adapting. You may ask, "What do I even want?" Do not be ashamed if the answer does not come immediately. Identity is not always rediscovered through thinking. Sometimes it is rediscovered through action. Try something. Notice how you feel. Spend time alone. without rushing to fill the silence. Pay attention to what gives you energy and what leaves you drained. The more present you become in your own life, the clearer your preferences will become. You are not required to return to exactly who you were before the relationship. That person did not yet know what you now understand. You have learned something about your wounds, your boundaries, your fears, and your tendency to abandon yourself when love feels uncertain. Use that knowledge. Do not rebuild the old version of you. Build a wiser one. Build someone who can love deeply without losing their direction. Build someone who can care without ignoring repeated disrespect. Build someone who can stay open while still protecting their peace. Build someone who understands that a relationship should become part of life, not the entire meaning of it. This is the difference between rebuilding and returning. Returning tries to recover the person you were before the pain. Rebuilding creates someone stronger because of what the pain revealed. The experience may have shown you that you fear being alone. It may have shown you that you become overly giving when you fear rejection. It may have shown you that you ignore patterns because potential feels more beautiful than reality. It may have shown you that you confuse being needed with being loved. These realizations can be painful, but they are valuable. When you understand your pattern, you become less likely to repeat it unconsciously. You begin noticing the moment you are giving too much. You recognize when you are shrinking your needs. You see when you are becoming obsessed with someone's approval. You hear yourself making excuses for behavior that repeatedly hurts you. Awareness gives you a chance to choose differently. But awareness alone is not enough. You must create new habits that support the identity you want to build. If checking their profile is part of your old pattern, create a new response when the urge appears. Stand up, move your body, write down what you are feeling, contact someone healthy, or redirect yourself toward a meaningful task. If evenings were spent waiting for their message, build an evening routine that belongs to you. Read, exercise, learn something, prepare for tomorrow, or sit quietly without feeding the attachment. If weekends were organized around them, begin creating plans that reconnect you with the world outside the relationship. A new identity needs new routines. You cannot become emotionally free while repeating every ritual that kept the connection alive. Your habits teach your mind what deserves attention. If every day still contains checking, replaying, waiting, and imagining, your mind will continue believing that the person remains central. Change what you repeatedly do, and slowly, what you repeatedly think begins changing too. This is why healing often feels practical before it feels emotional. You may still miss them while building a new routine. You may still feel grief while returning to your goals. You may still have difficult nights while strengthening your health. Do not wait for all pain to disappear before rebuilding. Rebuilding is part of how pain loses its power. You do not recover by sitting still until you feel completely ready. You recover by creating movement while carrying the feelings with you. There will be days when you feel strong and productive, and others when the loss feels close again. Do not interpret these changes as failure. Grief is not a straight line. You may feel free in the morning and deeply sad by evening. You may go several days without thinking about them, then wake from a dream that brings everything back. This does not erase progress. Healing is not measured by never remembering. It is measured by how much control the memory still has. Can you feel the sadness without contacting them? Can you remember the good without ignoring the harm? Can you miss the person without abandoning your new boundaries? Can you have a difficult day without returning to the same cycle? These are signs of strength. The goal is not emotional numbness. The goal is emotional independence. You are learning to experience feelings without making another person responsible for removing them. This is one of the greatest lessons detachment can teach. For too long, their presence may have become the solution to every uncomfortable emotion. When you felt lonely, you wanted them. When you felt insecure, you needed their reassurance. When you felt uncertain, you searched for a sign. When you felt empty, you imagined their return. Now you must learn to meet those feelings differently. Loneliness may be asking for connection, but not necessarily connection with them. Reach toward people who offer mutual care. Insecurity may be asking for evidence that you can trust yourself. Keep a promise. Complete a task. Do something that reminds you of your own ability. Emptiness may be asking for purpose. Create, learn, work, serve, or build something that matters beyond the relationship. Every feeling does not point back to the same person. Sometimes the feeling is asking you to become more present in your own life. You should also rebuild your relationship with your body. Attachment and heartbreak often live physically. You may feel heaviness in your chest, tension in your shoulders, restlessness at night, exhaustion during the day, or anxiety whenever your phone makes a sound. Your body may have spent months or years inside emotional uncertainty. It needs safety too. Create regular sleep when possible. Walk, breathe slowly, eat in ways that support energy. Spend time outside. Reduce the stimulation that keeps your mind activated. These actions may sound simple, but they send an important message to your nervous system. You are safe enough to return to yourself. A calm body helps create a clearer mind. You may still have thoughts about them, but the thoughts become less urgent when your body is no longer living in constant tension. You should also examine the friendships and relationships that may have been neglected. Unhealthy attachment often narrows your world. One person becomes the main source of connection, support, excitement, and validation. When that connection disappears, the world feels empty because too much meaning was concentrated in one place. Rebuilding requires expanding your life again. Reconnect with people who make you feel seen without making you earn their attention. Spend time with family members who bring stability. Invest in friendships that are mutual. Join environments where your identity is not connected to what happened. You do not need to tell your story everywhere. Sometimes it is healing to enter a room where nobody knows you as the person who was left, rejected, or hurt. You can simply be yourself. Healthy relationships will remind you that connection does not always have to feel uncertain. Some people will respond. Some will show up. Some will ask how you are and genuinely listen. Some will respect your boundaries without punishing you. Pay attention to these experiences. They help retrain your expectations. When you have spent too long in an inconsistent relationship, healthy consistency may initially feel unfamiliar or even boring. You may mistake anxiety for chemistry and calm for a lack of passion. This is something you must understand before beginning another relationship. Peace may not create the same emotional highs, but it creates something more valuable. Safety. Do not rush into another connection simply because you feel empty. A new person can distract you from the old attachment, but distraction is not the same as healing. If your identity still depends on being chosen, you may repeat the same pattern with a different face. You may become attracted to someone unavailable because the chase feels familiar. You may ignore early signs because attention feels exciting. You may abandon yourself again because being wanted temporarily relieves the pain of the previous loss. Give yourself enough time to understand what happened. Learn what your old pattern looked like before inviting someone new into the same space. This does not mean you must become perfectly healed before loving again. Nobody reaches perfect completion. It means you should become aware enough to recognize when fear is choosing for you. Ask yourself, am I interested in this person, or am I trying to escape loneliness? Do I feel safe or only stimulated? Can I remain myself around them? Am I observing their behavior or immediately building a future in my mind? These questions help protect the identity you are rebuilding. You must also create standards that do not disappear when attraction appears. It is easy to speak about boundaries while you are alone. The real test comes when you care about someone. Will you continue listening to your needs? Will you notice inconsistency without explaining it away? Will you speak honestly even if honesty risks losing the connection? Will you remain loyal to yourself when being chosen feels uncertain? These are the moments when your new identity becomes real. Anyone can feel powerful after leaving. The deeper work is remaining powerful when attachment begins again. You do not need to become guarded and suspicious. You need to become grounded. A guarded person closes every door, because they fear being hurt. A grounded person keeps the door open, but watches who enters, how they behave, and whether their presence supports peace. The goal is not to love less. It is to abandon yourself less. You can love fully and still have standards. You can forgive and still remember. You can care and still say no. You can remain soft without becoming available for repeated harm. This is emotional maturity. As you rebuild, there may be moments when the person returns. They may sense your distance. They may miss the attention you once gave. They may appear with apologies, promises, or memories of what you shared. Their return can awaken the old identity quickly. The part of you that wanted to be chosen may feel relieved. The part that feared permanent loss may want to forget everything. Pause. Ask whether their return supports the person you are becoming or only reconnects you to the person you were when you kept abandoning yourself. Do not make the decision based only on how much you miss them. Look at the pattern. Look at what changed. Look at whether responsibility has replaced excuses. Look at whether consistent action has replaced emotional words. Most importantly, look at what happens inside you. Do you feel peaceful or immediately uncertain? Do you feel respected or already afraid to speak? Do you feel free to be yourself? Or are you preparing to become smaller again? Your body often recognizes the old pattern before your mind is willing to admit it. Listen carefully. You may decide not to reopen the door. That does not mean your heart is cold. It may mean your identity has become stronger. The old version of you measured love by how much pain you could endure. The new version measures love by whether both people can remain honest, safe, and respected. This is growth. There is another important part of rebuilding: forgiving yourself for who you became inside the attachment. You may feel embarrassed about how much you begged, waited, checked, explained, or tolerated. You may look back and wonder how you accepted so little. Do not use your new clarity to attack the person you were. That version of you was trying to keep love, avoid loss, and find safety with the understanding available at the time. You may not approve of every decision, but you can understand it. Self-forgiveness does not mean pretending nothing happened. It means refusing to make shame another prison. Say to yourself, I understand why I stayed. I understand what I was afraid of. I see what I ignored, and now I am choosing differently. This is how the past becomes wisdom instead of identity. You are not the person who begged. You are the person learning why they begged and building a life where they no longer need to. You are not the person who tolerated everything. You are the person developing standards strong enough to walk away. You are not permanently defined by the weakest moments of your attachment. You are defined by what you choose after understanding them. Rebuilding also requires purpose. Without purpose, the mind often returns to old emotional stories because they provide intensity. A meaningful goal gives your attention somewhere to go. It does not need to be enormous. Learn a skill, improve your health, complete a project, build a business, study something meaningful, create art, help someone, organize your home, save money. Purpose reminds you that your life still contains unfinished possibilities. It shifts your question from "Why did they not choose me?" to "What can I build now that I am choosing myself?" This is a powerful shift. You stop seeing yourself only as someone recovering from loss. You begin seeing yourself as someone creating a future. You become curious again. You begin making plans. You start noticing opportunities that attachment once made invisible. The world becomes larger. This does not happen immediately, but it happens each time you direct your energy towards something that can grow. Your pain becomes smaller when your life becomes larger. Do not misunderstand this. You are not running from grief through constant productivity. Rest is necessary. Reflection is necessary. Some days you may need quiet rather than achievement, but there is a difference between resting and waiting for the past to return. Rest prepares you for life. Waiting keeps life paused. Give grief space, but do not give it the entire house. Create room for laughter, work, friendship, discovery, and hope. You may feel guilty the first time you enjoy yourself without them. You may laugh, and suddenly remember that the relationship ended. You may have a good day and feel as though happiness means the connection did not matter. This is not true. You are allowed to heal. You are allowed to enjoy your life. You are allowed to experience peace without apologizing to the past. Your suffering is not proof that your love was real. You do not need to remain broken to honor what happened. The relationship can have mattered, and you can still recover completely. You may eventually reach a day when you no longer want them back. Not because you hate them, because you no longer want to become the person you were beside them. This is one of the clearest signs that your identity has returned. You begin valuing your peace more than the familiar connection. You stop romanticizing the intensity because you remember the cost. You realize that returning would require betraying too much of what you have rebuilt. At that point, letting go no longer feels only like losing them. It feels like choosing yourself, and choosing yourself begins feeling natural. You protect your routine. You respect your limits. You enjoy your own company. You build relationships from desire rather than desperation. You no longer ask another person to give your life meaning. You invite them to share a life that already has meaning. This is the identity you are building, not someone who never needs anyone, not someone who becomes emotionally cold, someone who knows that love should never require the destruction of self, someone who can connect deeply while remaining connected to their own values, goals, body, friendships, and future. Someone who can say, "I love you," without silently meaning, "Please do not leave me, because I no longer know who I am without you." This is freedom. You are not rebuilding so you can prove what they lost. You are rebuilding because you finally understand what you lost inside yourself. Do not make your recovery another performance for them. Do not post, succeed, or change only to make them regret leaving. That still places them at the center. Let your growth become private. Let it belong to you. Become stronger, even if they never see it. Become peaceful, even if they never apologize. Become fulfilled, even if they never regret what happened. The strongest version of you is not the one that makes them look back. It is the one that no longer needs them to. One day, you may look back at this season and realize that losing the relationship forced you to recover parts of yourself you had neglected for too long. You may recognize that the silence taught you how to hear your own voice again. The loneliness taught you how to become present in your own life. The disappointment taught you to stop confusing potential with character. The ending taught you that love without self-respect is too expensive. Do not romanticize the pain, but do not waste what it revealed. Use the lesson to build a life in which you remain visible to yourself. A life where your goals do not disappear when someone enters. A life where your boundaries do not collapse because you fear rejection. A life where love is welcome, but self-abandonment is not. Rebuild patiently. Return to one neglected part of yourself at a time. Return to your body. Return to your friendships. Return to your ambitions. Return to your laughter. Return to the quiet person inside you who has been waiting for your attention. You do not need to become who you were before them. Become someone wiser because you finally came back to yourself. The person you lost while trying to keep them is still there, waiting beneath the grief, waiting beneath the habit, waiting beneath the fear. Reach for that person, protect them, build around them, and this time, no matter who enters or leaves your life, do not abandon yourself again. Chapter 6. Forgive without giving them access again. After rebuilding the parts of yourself that disappeared inside attachment, you will eventually face one of the most difficult questions in healing. Can you forgive someone without allowing them back into your life? The answer is yes. Forgiveness does not require reunion. It does not mean reopening the door, restoring trust immediately, or pretending the past did not happen. Forgiveness means you no longer want the pain to control your thoughts, your choices, and the direction of your future. Access, however, is earned through responsibility, consistency, and changed behavior. These are two completely different things, and confusing them can pull you back into the same cycle you worked so hard to escape. Many people return to harmful connections because they believe distance makes them cruel. They think that if they have truly healed, they should be able to answer the message, accept the apology, and give another chance. They believe forgiveness must look like friendship, closeness, or reconciliation. But healing is not measured by how easily you allow someone back into your life. Sometimes the greatest evidence of healing is your ability to wish someone well while refusing to return to the environment that repeatedly damaged your peace. You can forgive someone and still understand that they are not safe for you. You can stop hating them and still decide that trust cannot be rebuilt. You can release the anger and still remember the pattern clearly. This is not bitterness. It is emotional wisdom. Bitterness wants the other person to suffer because you suffered. Wisdom simply decides that you will not continue suffering because of what you have learned. Bitterness keeps you connected through anger, while wisdom allows the lesson to remain after the emotional grip begins to disappear. This distinction matters because hatred can become another form of attachment. When you spend your days replaying what they did, imagining revenge, waiting for them to regret losing you, or hoping life punishes them, they are still at the center of your emotional world. You may no longer be waiting for their love, but you are still waiting for their pain. Your attention remains tied to them, and your peace still depends on what happens in their life. That is not freedom. Freedom begins when their happiness, regret, success, failure, apology, or silence no longer determines whether you can move forward. You do not need them to suffer in order for your pain to be valid. You do not need them to admit everything before you are allowed to heal. You do not need life to punish them before you can release the story. Your healing is not a courtroom, and your anger does not have to become the judge. What happened mattered. It affected you. It taught you something. But remaining emotionally injured is not the only way to prove that the injury was real. Forgiveness allows you to remember without constantly reliving. Remembering says, "This happened, and I learned from it." Reliving says, "This is still happening inside me every time I replay it." You may be physically far from the person while returning to them mentally every night. You remember the conversation, imagine what you should have said, create a better ending, or picture the day they finally understand the damage they caused. For a moment, this may feel like control, but every replay gives the past another piece of your present. Your body does not always know the difference between a memory and a current threat. When you repeatedly return to the same painful scene, your heart may race, your muscles may tighten, your sleep may become disturbed, and your mood may change as if the event were happening again. This is why forgiveness is not only an emotional idea, it is also a way of telling your mind and body that the event is over, even if the lesson remains. Forgiveness may not happen once. You may feel peaceful for several days and then become angry again when a memory returns. You may believe you have released the person, only to feel pain when you hear their name or see something connected to the past. This does not mean you failed. Healing often happens in layers. Each return of emotion gives you another opportunity to respond differently. Instead of feeding the anger, listen to what it is protecting. Perhaps it is reminding you that a boundary was crossed. Perhaps it is protecting the version of you that felt powerless. Perhaps it is afraid that forgiveness will make you vulnerable again. You can reassure yourself without reopening the wound. You can say, "I remember what happened. I understand the lesson. I will not allow the same pattern again." Your anger does not need to remain active every day for your boundary to remain strong. You can remember clearly without burning constantly. The lesson can live inside your standards instead of living inside your pain. You may decide that you will no longer remain where honesty is absent. You may decide that you will stop repeatedly explaining basic needs. You may decide that apologies will no longer impress you unless behavior changes afterward. You may decide that you will never again sacrifice your dignity to keep someone's attention. These standards protect you better than permanent anger ever could. Once the lesson has become part of your character, you no longer need to carry the wound in the same way. You can release the emotional poison while keeping the wisdom. This is where forgiveness and boundaries must work together. Forgiveness without boundaries may lead you back into the same suffering. Boundaries without forgiveness may keep you physically distant, but emotionally trapped. You need both protection and release. Forgiveness removes the emotional chain. The boundary prevents the chain from being rebuilt. This becomes especially important when the person returns. They may contact you after weeks, months, or even years. They may say they miss you, understand your value, regret what happened, or finally recognize the damage they caused. These words may reach the deepest part of you because they are the words you once waited so desperately to hear. For a moment, relief may feel like healing. You may think, "This is the closure I wanted." You may believe that because the apology finally arrived, the old relationship can now become the relationship you imagined. But relief is not the same as repair. Relief is emotional and immediate. Repair is slow and visible. Repair requires honesty without excuses. It requires responsibility without blame. It requires behavior that remains different even after the emotional conversation ends. It requires patience with your fear, respect for your boundaries, and acceptance that trust cannot be restored through words alone. A person who has truly changed will understand why you move slowly. They will not pressure you to forgive faster. They will not become angry because you remember the past. They will not say, "If you truly forgave me, you would trust me again." They will understand that forgiveness is not a shortcut back into your life. Pay close attention to how someone behaves when their apology does not immediately restore their access. Do they remain patient, accountable, and respectful, or do they become defensive, impatient, and manipulative? Do they care about your healing, or are they mainly concerned about recovering the comfort they once received from you? Some people return because they miss the role you played. They miss your attention, care, emotional availability, forgiveness, or willingness to stay. They may miss what you provided more than they understand who you are. This does not mean every return is false, but it means you must observe more than words. Ask what has changed beyond the apology. Have they taken responsibility clearly? Have they changed the habits that created the harm? Have they respected your silence and boundaries? Have they remained consistent when they did not immediately receive what they wanted? Real change becomes visible over time. You should not have to imagine it. You should also pay attention to what happens inside you when they return. Does your body feel calm, or does the old anxiety return immediately? Do you feel free to speak honestly, or do you begin preparing to become smaller again? Do you feel respected, or do you already fear that one wrong word will make them withdraw? Your body often remembers what your heart tries to romanticize. This does not automatically mean you should reject every return, but it means you should not rush. You are allowed to take time. You are allowed to observe. You are allowed to forgive without answering. You are allowed to say, "I hear your apology, but I do not believe reopening this connection is healthy for me." You are also allowed to keep your forgiveness private. Not every healing decision needs to become a conversation. Sometimes telling someone you forgive them can reopen the exact door you worked hard to close. They may interpret forgiveness as an invitation, begin negotiating for access, or use your kindness to test whether the boundary still exists. You do not owe anyone a beautiful final message in order to prove that your heart is clean. You can forgive internally. You can stop replaying the story. You can wish them no harm. You can release the need for revenge. Then you can continue walking without contacting them. There is power in forgiving without informing. The purpose of forgiveness is not to make the other person comfortable. It is to stop allowing what happened to control your inner world. But there is another person who may need your forgiveness even more. You. You may be angry with yourself because you stayed too long, ignored warning signs, returned after promising you would not, or begged for attention from someone who kept showing you uncertainty. You may look back with new clarity and judge the older version of yourself harshly. How did I accept so little? Why did I believe another promise? Why did I keep trying? Why did I abandon myself? These questions may contain truth, but shame will not help you grow. The person you were did not know everything you know now. They were acting from hope, fear, loneliness, love, and the desire to preserve something that once felt meaningful. Perhaps they believed patience would create change. Perhaps they were afraid of being alone. Perhaps they learned earlier in life that love had to be earned through sacrifice. Understanding this does not mean refusing responsibility. It means refusing to turn responsibility into self-hatred. Shame says, "I was foolish." Responsibility says, "I made choices I now understand differently." Shame freezes you inside the old identity. Responsibility allows you to build a new one. You are not permanently the person who stayed too long. You are the person who now understands why they stayed and is creating stronger boundaries. You are not permanently the person who begged. You are the person learning that love should never require the destruction of dignity. You are not permanently the person who returned. You are the person who can now choose differently. Forgive yourself for trying to find safety with the tools you had. Then develop better tools. Build self-awareness. Create standards. Learn to sit with loneliness without returning to harm. Learn to recognize inconsistency before you become emotionally invested. Learn to trust patterns more than promises. Self-forgiveness is not permission to repeat the same behavior. It is the foundation for refusing to repeat it. You can say, "I forgive myself, and because I forgive myself, I will no longer place myself back inside the same suffering." This is real compassion. Compassion does not mean allowing yourself to remain trapped because the past version of you was afraid. Compassion means becoming the protector that version of you needed. You protect them by not handing them back to the same pattern. You protect them by no longer calling self-abandonment love. You protect them by saying, "I will not leave you again just because someone else threatens to." This promise can become one of the most powerful parts of your recovery. You may also need to repair areas of your life that attachment damaged. Perhaps you neglected friends, withdrew from family, stopped working toward important goals, or became someone you did not recognize. Forgiving yourself does not mean pretending these consequences do not exist. It means facing them without using shame as an excuse to remain stuck. Reach out where repair is possible. Apologize where necessary. Return to responsibilities. Rebuild trust with yourself and others. Some opportunities may not return. Some relationships may have changed. Time may have been lost. But punishing yourself cannot recover what is gone. The only useful response is to stop losing more. Take the consequence. Take the lesson. Then take the next step. You may also need to forgive yourself for still missing them. This can be confusing because your mind may understand that the relationship was unhealthy while your heart still remembers the good moments. You may know that leaving was necessary and still wish the ending had been different. You may feel ashamed that part of you still wants them to call, but emotions do not disappear the moment clarity arrives. The mind often understands first. The heart follows more slowly. Missing someone does not mean you should return. Caring does not mean the connection was healthy. Remembering the good does not erase the harm. These feelings are not commands. They are simply evidence that something mattered to you. Let the feeling exist without turning it into action. Feel the memory, but protect the boundary. Feel the sadness, but continue rebuilding. Feel the love, but choose what is healthy. This is emotional maturity. It allows two truths to exist at the same time. The person may have cared for you, and their behavior may still have harmed you. You may have loved sincerely, and you may still have abandoned yourself. There may have been beautiful moments, and the relationship may still have been unhealthy overall. You do not need to make them completely evil in order to leave. This is important because when your healing depends on believing that they were terrible in every way, one good memory can pull you back. You begin questioning everything. You remember their kindness and wonder whether you exaggerated the pain. They may not have been a monster. The connection may still have been wrong for your life. You only need to recognize what the pattern did to your peace. You can remember what was beautiful without using it to excuse what was harmful. You can appreciate the lesson without returning to the place where you learnt it. You can bless the chapter and still close the book. There may also be days when you desire justice. You may hear that they moved on quickly, appear happy, or act as though nothing happened. This can make the pain feel unfair. You may wonder why you are still healing while they seem unaffected. Do not make their suffering the condition for your freedom. You do not know what happens inside them. You do not know what patterns they will repeat, or what consequences may arrive later. You do not need to know. Let life handle their consequences. Let your responsibility be healing. The greatest justice may be that the pattern no longer reaches you. It may be that you sleep peacefully, rebuild your confidence, and learn to love without losing yourself. It may be that their name no longer changes your entire day. This is not dramatic revenge. It is something better. Freedom. Forgiveness also requires releasing the belief that the past would have been different if you had been better. You may tell yourself that if you had been more patient, attractive, calm, understanding, or easy to love, the relationship would have survived. Perhaps you made mistakes. Take responsibility for them. But do not take responsibility for both sides. You could not communicate for both people. You could not heal for both people. You could not choose commitment for both people. You could not carry an entire relationship alone. A healthy connection is not destroyed by one imperfect conversation. It is shaped by the repeated behavior of both people. If you became anxious, examine whether the relationship created constant uncertainty. If you kept asking for reassurance, examine whether the person offered consistency. If you eventually reacted strongly, examine how long you had been silencing your pain. Context does not excuse your mistakes, but it helps you understand them. Apologize for what was yours. Learn from it. Improve. Then release what never belonged to you. Another part of forgiveness is refusing to build your identity around what happened. You may have truly been rejected, betrayed, manipulated, ignored, or emotionally harmed. Acknowledging this matters, but if the wound becomes your permanent identity, the person continues shaping your life. You begin entering every new relationship, expecting abandonment. You distrust kindness. You become guarded before anyone has earned your suspicion. You interpret small changes as signs that the past is repeating. This is how yesterday begins controlling tomorrow. You were hurt, but you were also healing. You were abandoned, but you were also returning to yourself. You were betrayed, but you were also becoming wiser. Do not define yourself only by what someone did to you. Define yourself by what you chose to become after it. Your life contains chapters before them and chapters after them. Forgiveness makes room for those new chapters. It removes the person from the center of your identity and allows you to become interested in the world again. You begin creating experiences that do not require the pain as a reference point. You spend time with people who know more than your wound. You build routines, friendships, goals, and memories that do not belong to the old story. Your life becomes larger than what happened. This is why taking your life back requires more than releasing. It also requires building. You release resentment, then build peace. You release fantasy, then build purpose. You release the need for their apology, then build self-trust. You close the door, then build a life that no longer feels empty without them. Do not leave the inner space empty and expect the past not to return. Give your attention a new direction. Fill the space with discipline, friendship, creativity, rest, learning, health, and a stronger relationship with yourself. Eventually, you may notice that you can think of them without anger. Do not mistake this peace for an invitation to return. Peace does not mean the relationship has become healthy. It means you have become less controlled by the past. You do not need to test your healing by reopening contact. A scar does not need another wound to prove it has healed. Let peace remain peace. You may sincerely hope they grow. You may understand their pain more deeply. You may even remember them kindly. None of this requires reunion. You can say within yourself, I hope you heal, but I cannot continue being harmed while you learn. That is not coldness. It is compassion with boundaries. Compassion without boundaries can become self-destruction. Boundaries without compassion can become bitterness. Emotional strength is the ability to carry both, a soft heart and a protected life. You can forgive without forgetting the evidence. You can wish them well without giving them access. You can release revenge without restoring trust. You can remain kind without returning to the place where kindness was repeatedly used against you. This balance is freedom. Perhaps the door will remain closed forever. Perhaps after a long period of genuine change, a different kind of connection might one day become possible. You do not need to decide every future possibility now. You only need to respond wisely to what is true today. What protects your peace now? What supports your healing now? What allows you to remain the person you worked so hard to rebuild? Make the decision from that place. Do not let loneliness rewrite the pattern. Do not let one apology erase the history. Do not let one beautiful memory become stronger than repeated evidence. Watch actions. Respect time. Real change survives time. Manipulation becomes impatient. Genuine accountability respects your boundary. Fear of losing access tries to break it quickly. Let time reveal what words cannot. And remember that even if the other person genuinely changes, you are still not obligated to return. Their growth does not create a debt. They may become better. You may become wiser. The healthiest future may still exist separately. Sometimes two people heal, but not for each other. Sometimes forgiveness is the final act of love, not the beginning of another chance. You forgive them enough to stop hating. You forgive yourself enough to stop returning. One day their name may no longer create the same reaction. You may remember the past without entering it. You may understand what was good, what was painful, and why it had to end. The story will no longer stand in front of you. It will remain behind you, where it can teach without steering. You will no longer need to keep the wound open to remember the lesson. You will no longer need their regret to prove your value. You will no longer need their apology to validate your experience. You will have become the person who can give yourself what you once waited for them to provide: understanding, protection, permission to leave, permission to heal, and permission to begin again. This is how you forgive without reopening the door. You release the anger, but keep the wisdom. You release the desire for revenge, but keep the boundary. You release the need for their regret, but keep your self-respect. You release the story, but keep the lesson. And when the past knocks again, you will not need hatred to keep the door closed. Clarity will be enough. Chapter 7. Take your life back completely. Detachment is not complete when you stop contacting them. It is complete when your life is no longer organized around their absence. You may delete the messages, block the number, stop checking their profile, and still remain emotionally connected through anger, fantasy, comparison, and the secret hope that one day they will return and finally recognize your worth. You may appear to be moving forward while still building every new decision around what they might think. This is why taking your life back requires more than separation. It requires removing them from the center of your future. For a long time, they may have occupied the most important place in your mind. Your mornings began with thoughts of them. Your evenings ended with memories. Your mood depended on whether they responded, whether they seemed distant, and whether you believed the connection still had a chance. Even after leaving, you may continue living in reaction to them. You improve your appearance because you want them to notice. You work harder because you want them to regret underestimating you. You share your progress because you hope the news reaches them. You imagine the day they see you happy and finally understand what they lost. This may feel like moving on, but they are still directing the movement. Your life is still facing backward. The strongest transformation is not the one that makes them regret losing you. It is the one you would continue, even if they never saw it. You must stop building your future as a message to your past. Your health should not become a punishment for them. Your success should not become a performance. Your peace should not depend on whether they notice your absence. Build because your life matters. Heal because you deserve to wake up without carrying yesterday into every new morning. Become disciplined because your future needs someone reliable. Grow because you have already spent enough time shrinking yourself to fit inside a connection that never gave you enough room. This is where detachment becomes freedom rather than strategy. You are not walking away to make them chase you. You are walking forward because your life has waited long enough. The first step is to reclaim your attention. Attention is one of the most valuable things you possess because whatever receives it repeatedly begins shaping your emotional world. If your attention remains fixed on the past continues influencing your identity, even when the person is no longer present. Notice where your mind goes when it is not occupied. Does it return to the old conversation? Does it imagine their current life? Does it wonder whether they are happier without you? Does it compare your healing with the speed at which they appeared to move on? These thoughts may arise naturally, but you do not have to build a home inside them. Each time your mind returns to them, bring it back to a question that belongs to you. What does my life need from me today? Perhaps your body needs rest. Perhaps your future needs focused work. Perhaps your home needs order. Perhaps a neglected friendship needs attention. Perhaps a dream you abandoned needs another chance. This question directs your energy towards something you can actually influence. You cannot control what they think, whom they choose, whether they change, or whether they ever understand your value. But you can control whether another day disappears while you study a life that is no longer yours to manage. Your attention must become an investment in your own future. This will require purpose. Without direction, the mind often returns to old emotional stories because those stories provide intensity. Even painful memories can feel more stimulating than the quiet uncertainty of beginning again. A meaningful goal gives your energy somewhere healthier to go. You do not need to transform your entire life at once. Choose one area that attachment caused you to neglect: your health, your work, your finances, your education, your friendships, your creativity, your confidence. Begin there. The purpose is not to distract yourself from grief. Distraction covers pain temporarily. Purpose helps you become larger than it. Grief may still travel beside you for a while, but it no longer has to choose the destination. You can feel sad and still complete something meaningful. You can miss them and still protect your mourning. You can carry unanswered questions and still build a future that does not depend on the answers. This is a powerful change because it teaches you that pain and progress can exist together. You do not need to wait until you feel completely healed before participating in your life again. Sometimes participation is part of healing. Every task completed, every promise kept, and every healthy choice becomes evidence that your life is returning to your hands. You should also rebuild a life with more than one source of meaning. When one person becomes your entire emotional world, losing them feels like losing everything. They were not only a partner or attachment, they became your closest friend, your main source of comfort, your imagined future, your daily routine, and the person through whom you measured your worth. No single human being should be required to carry that much meaning. A fuller life contains several foundations: friendship, family, purpose, health, learning, creativity, rest, service, self-respect. When meaning is spread across a rich and balanced life, one loss can still hurt deeply, but it does not erase your entire identity. This does not make future love less important. It makes love healthier. A future relationship should not rescue you from an empty life. It should become part of a meaningful life you have already begun building. You should be able to love someone without handing them complete control over your emotional survival. You should be able to care while remaining connected to your goals, values, friendships, and inner direction. This is not independence that rejects closeness. It is wholeness that protects closeness from becoming dependency. Detachment should also change what you accept in the future. Pain is wasted when it teaches you nothing. You must take the standards you discovered and carry them forward. Perhaps you learned that strong chemistry cannot replace consistency. Perhaps you learned that beautiful promises mean little without action. Perhaps you learned that uncertainty can create obsession. But obsession is not intimacy. Perhaps you learned that someone's potential should never become more important than their behavior. Perhaps you learned that being chosen is not enough if you feel alone after being chosen. Do not forget these lessons when someone new appears and attraction becomes powerful. Loneliness may try to lower your standards. Attention may feel so comforting that you ignore early signs. The desire to believe in love again may make you rush into a future before reality has had time to reveal the person. Move slowly enough to see clearly. Observe how someone behaves when things become inconvenient. Notice whether communication remains respectful during disagreement. Notice whether their actions support their words. Notice whether you feel free to express your needs or whether you are already afraid of losing them. Do not build another imagined person from a few beautiful moments. Let character reveal itself over time. This is not cynicism. It is discernment. A cynical person believes nobody can be trusted. A discerning person understands that trust must be built through evidence. You do not need to close your heart. You need to stop opening it so quickly that your standards are left outside. You can remain soft and still move carefully. You can enjoy connection without immediately creating a permanent future in your mind. You can feel attraction while continuing to observe reality. This is how you protect the version of yourself you worked so hard to recover. Taking your life back also requires learning how to be alone without treating solitude as failure. After an intense attachment, quiet may feel empty. You may interpret the absence of messages, plans, and emotional highs as proof that something is missing. But quiet is not the same as emptiness. Quiet can become space. Space to hear yourself. Space to recover your energy. Space to understand what you truly want, without another person's expectations shaping the answer. The ability to sit peacefully with yourself is a form of power. When solitude no longer terrifies you, you become less likely to accept harmful relationships simply to avoid it. You stop negotiating your dignity for company. You stop treating inconsistent attention as better than silence. You stop returning to people who hurt you because one lonely evening made the past look safer than it was. Loneliness can speak very convincingly. It may say, "At least you had someone," but having someone who constantly disturbs your peace can feel lonelier than being physically alone. Do not measure connection only by presence. Measure it by how fully you are allowed to exist within it. Were you seen? Were you respected? Could you speak honestly? Did the relationship make life more grounded? Or did it make you question yourself constantly? Solitude can be painful, but it can also become the place where you stop accepting emotional loneliness beside another person. There will still be difficult moments. A date may remind you of them. A song may reopen a memory. You may experience success and wish they were there to see it. You may feel tired and want the familiar comfort of their voice, even though that same connection also created pain. Do not panic when these moments arrive. Healing does not erase memory. It changes your relationship with memory. A memory can visit without becoming a destination. You can allow the feeling to pass through without following it back to the person. Say, "This mattered to me, and it is still over." That sentence allows both truth and emotion to exist. You do not have to deny the love to protect the boundary. You do not have to rewrite the entire past as terrible in order to move forward. Something can have contained beauty and still have become unhealthy. A person can have mattered and still not belong in your future. This balanced truth gives you stronger freedom than anger because it cannot be destroyed by one beautiful memory. You are not leaving because nothing was good. You are leaving because the whole pattern was not safe enough to continue. Taking your life back also means refusing to compete with whoever comes after you. You may hear that they are with someone new. You may begin comparing appearances, personalities, accomplishments, or how quickly the new relationship seems to be progressing. This comparison is a trap. You do not know the full reality of another connection. You only see what is visible. More importantly, their next choice is not a judgment of your value. Someone choosing another person does not make that person superior. Human relationships are not rankings. People choose based on timing, familiarity, wounds, preferences, readiness, and countless factors that have nothing to do with one person being more worthy than another. Do not turn their new relationship into evidence that you were the problem. The fact that they appear different with someone else does not mean you imagined what happened. People may behave differently in different circumstances, and appearances often reveal very little. Your healing does not require you to solve their new life. Let it belong to them. Return to yours. The more time you spend comparing yourself to someone who is living a different story, the more you delay discovering what your own life could become. You may also be tempted to rush into another relationship to prove that you have moved on. Do not use another person as evidence for the past. A new relationship should not become a performance designed to show that you are desirable. It should not become a way to avoid grief or create jealousy. People are not medicine. They cannot permanently heal an identity you have not rebuilt. Entering a connection from emptiness may cause you to ignore compatibility because attention feels comforting. You may repeat the same patterns simply because the new person arrives with a different face. Take enough time to understand yourself. What do you need now? What will you no longer tolerate? What patterns make you abandon your own voice? What does healthy connection look like in daily behavior rather than fantasy? These answers will help you choose from clarity instead of desperation. The goal is not to become so independent that nobody matters. The goal is to become so grounded that love can enter without taking ownership of your entire identity. You should also take your time back physically. Attachment consumes hours, hours checking, hours waiting, hours replaying, hours imagining, hours recovering from emotional confusion. Now those hours must be reclaimed intentionally. Create structure. Protect part of your morning. Reduce the empty periods when the mind automatically returns to the past. Plan meaningful activity, but also allow real rest. There is a difference between rest and emotional avoidance. Rest restores you. Avoidance keeps you numb until the pain returns. Choose activities that leave you feeling more present rather than more disconnected. Walk without your phone. Read something that expands your thinking. Exercise. Organize your surroundings. Learn a skill. Spend time with people whose presence calms you. Build evidence that a meaningful day can exist without them. Each good day weakens the belief that your best life ended with the relationship. Eventually, you will experience moments of happiness that have nothing to do with them. At first, you may feel guilty. You may laugh and suddenly remember that the story ended. You may enjoy a new place and think, I wish they could see this. Then, with time, the moment begins belonging only to you. This is part of recovery. Your life stops needing their witness to feel real. You become capable of enjoying something without imagining how they would react. You become your own witness. This is a quiet but powerful form of freedom. You also need to reclaim your self-trust. Attachment often damages the relationship you have with your own judgment. You saw signs but ignored them. You made promises to leave but returned. You told yourself the pattern would not repeat, then watched it repeat again. Now you may question whether you can trust your decisions. Self-trust is not rebuilt through one declaration. It is rebuilt when you begin protecting yourself consistently. Every time you honor a boundary, trust returns. Every time you resist the urge to check, trust returns. Every time you choose reality over fantasy, trust returns. Every time you listen to discomfort instead of explaining it away, trust returns. You begin proving that you are no longer willing to sacrifice yourself just to keep someone nearby. This proof matters because future peace depends on knowing that you will not abandon yourself again. You do not need a guarantee that nobody will ever hurt you. No such guarantee exists. You need confidence that if something becomes harmful, you will recognize it and respond. That is a more realistic form of safety. You cannot control every person who enters your life. You can strengthen the person responsible for deciding who remains. Become someone who listens to patterns, someone who speaks early, instead of waiting until resentment becomes unbearable, someone who does not confuse empathy with obligation, someone who can leave without needing the other person to agree. This is how pain becomes strength without turning you cold. Your future may contain love again, It may contain a connection that feels calmer, clearer, and more mutual than what you experienced before. But do not make future love the only reward of healing. Your life is valuable even before another person arrives. The reward is also waking up with peace, thinking clearly, using your energy well, returning to your goals, feeling at home inside yourself, no longer begging another person to confirm that you matter. These things are not a waiting room for love. They are a meaningful life. When you understand this, future relationships become a choice rather than a rescue. You are not saying, "Complete me." You are saying, "Walk beside me without asking me to disappear." This is a completely different foundation. Taking your life back means accepting that some part of you may always remember. There is no need to erase the chapter. You only need to place it where it belongs, behind you, a source of wisdom, not direction, a memory, not a command, a lesson, not an identity. One day, you may notice that their name no longer changes your breathing. You may remember something beautiful without feeling the need to return. You may hear that they are doing well and feel no desire to compare. The story will have lost its authority, not because it never mattered, because you finally matter more. This is the final lesson of detachment. You stop making another person the main character in your recovery. You stop waiting for them to apologize, regret, return, or suffer. You stop building for their attention. You stop healing for their approval. You turn completely toward your own life. There may still be grief, but grief is no longer driving. There may still be memory, but memory is no longer deciding. There may still be love, but love is no longer demanding self-abandonment. You become free not because every feeling disappears, but because your choices no longer belong to those feelings. Take back your mornings. Take back your sleep. Take back the goals you postponed. Take back the friendships you neglected. Take back the confidence you placed inside someone else's hands. Take back the future you kept imagining with them and begin building one that does not require their participation. Do not wait for one dramatic moment when you suddenly feel completely detached. Detachment is built through ordinary choices. One day without checking, one boundary protected, one evening spent living instead of waiting, one decision made without wondering what they will think, one goal completed for yourself. These choices gather. Eventually, they become a different life. A life in which their absence is no longer the most important thing. A life in which your own presence becomes enough to begin again. You are not taking your life back from them because they physically possess it. You are taking it back from the hope, fear, fantasy, and need for approval that kept your attention trapped. Your life has always been waiting inside your choices. Choose it now. Choose the work that brings you forward. Choose the people who meet you with consistency. Choose the solitude that protects your dignity over the connection that destroys it. Choose reality, even when fantasy feels more beautiful. Choose yourself, even when part of you still wants to be chosen by them. One day, you will understand that letting go did not take your life away. Holding on did. Letting go simply returned it. So turn toward what remains. Your time remains, your ability remains, your future remains, your capacity to love, rebuild, trust wisely, and begin again remains. Nothing essential was taken from you forever. You may have lost a person, you may have lost a dream, you may have lost years waiting for something to become what it never became, but you have not lost your right to create what comes next. Take that right seriously. Do not build the next chapter around the pain of the previous one. Build it around the person you are becoming now. A person who can love without begging. A person who can care without disappearing. A person who can forgive without reopening the door. A person who can remember without returning. A person who has finally understood that freedom begins the moment you stop asking someone else for permission to live your own life. Take your life back completely, and this time, keep it. You have spent enough time waiting for someone else to give you permission to feel free, enough time checking for signs, replaying conversations, imagining different endings, and hoping that one day they would finally become the person you needed them to be. But your life cannot remain tied to someone else's uncertainty. You do not need one more apology. You do not need one more promise. You do not need one more return that changes nothing. What you need now is the courage to stop handing your peace back to the same place that kept taking it from you. Detachment does not mean the love was fake. It does not mean the memories were meaningless. It does not mean you must erase every feeling. It means you finally understand that love should never cost you your identity, your dignity, your sleep, your focus, or your future. You can care and still leave. You can forgive and still keep the door closed. You can remember and still move forward. You can miss them and still choose yourself. That is not weakness. That is freedom. The person you kept waiting for may never return in the form you imagined. They may never understand everything. They may never apologize in the way you hoped. They may never recognize what you gave. Let that be their unfinished work. Your work is to return to yourself. Return to the goals you placed on hold. Return to the friendships you neglected. Return to the parts of your personality that became quiet. Return to your body, your routines, your standards, and your future. Your life has been waiting patiently beneath the attachment. It has been waiting for your attention, waiting for your energy, waiting for you to stop looking backward long enough to see what is still possible. Do not make the next chapter about proving what they lost. Make it about discovering what you still have. You still have time. You still have choices. You still have the ability to rebuild. You still have the capacity to love again without abandoning yourself. Nothing essential was taken from you forever. Perhaps you lost a person. Perhaps you lost a dream. Perhaps you lost years hoping something would become what it never became. But you have not lost the right to create what comes next. So create it. Create a life that does not depend on someone else's approval. Create peace that cannot be destroyed by one message. Create standards that do not disappear when loneliness arrives. Create a future that does not require the past to apologize. And when the memory returns, do not fight it. Simply remember the truth. You loved. You learned. You stayed longer than you should have. You finally saw clearly. And now you are choosing differently. That is growth. That is healing. That is detachment. One day, you will realize that letting go did not take your life away. Holding on did. Letting go simply returned it. So take back your mornings. Take back your sleep. Take back your attention. Take back your confidence. Take back the future you kept giving to someone who was uncertain about your place in theirs. Take your life back completely. And this time, do not hand yourself away just to be chosen. Choose yourself.